found when we looked at the survey, and we used cluster analysis, for those of you aware of cluster analysis, to identify what the different motivations were for different people who are participating outdoors. But what we found was there was these 6 key reasons, which I'm going to go through now, as to why people participate outdoors, and it's no surprise that they're going to be the ones you put on the board here. And then we sort of extracted those and we said, right, okay, what's left? What really does separate out why one person does it to the reason why somebody else does it? And that was called cluster analysis. So we pulled all those factors together, the common factors, and identified 8 different groups. So I'm going to talk through the key motivating factors, the 6 key motivating factors, and then we're going to talk through the 8 segments, and then we're going to give you a chance to have a look at the segments. So, no surprise, to enjoy the scenery and be close to nature, not activity related, just I want to be out there. As I said right at the start, that was a key motivating factor for 55 years plus. Came through. It doesn't mean it's not for others, but it came through as a key motivating factor for them. Connected to that, enjoying the fresh air, enjoying the weather. Regardless in this country, would you believe, people participate throughout the year regardless of the weather. That was the top reason stated for 40% of the respondents. To relax and de-stress and get away from modern life. This came through as the #1 reason for 18 to 24-year-olds, which really is reinforced within the Young People Insight work. And their definition of de-stressing is things like Tough Mudder events and things like that. They're actually using it as a vehicle to actually just be with their mates and get away from things. So they're very much environment related, if you like, and very personal. Spending time with family, as we said, that's the #1 reason for re-engagement within the outdoors. Having fun with friends, particularly for the young people. So what was really encouraging with this is that a lot of the work that Insight that's already been done by Sport England was reinforced by this. So came through when you extracted the fun with friends by age group, it was a key motivator for under 18s. And then the alternative to traditional sport. So those people who perhaps didn't like traditional sport at school, they saw this as an alternative to participation. And as I've said, 10% of the adult population have stated they'd want to do something that's lifestyle, non-traditional. So they're the biggies, they're the key drivers. But as I said, what we really wanted to get under the skin of is what differentiates them out. So we've got 8 segments, and I'm going to talk through each one. So the first one is the adventurer. So for these guys, it's absolutely about living life to the full. So they see the outdoors as a playground, they want to physically push themselves, they want some personal achievement, but that's balanced off with having a good time with their mates as well, going out and having a good old adventure in the great outdoors playground. Quite typical imagery used for the outdoors, quite quick. Often people use the word adventurer for the outdoors. 7%. 7%. And this is really interesting because when we depending on, it'd be interesting to know what you are when we think this, but a lot of people think these segments through their own eyes. When we talk to different organisations, if they deal a lot with adventurers, they see the whole world as adventurers.
And that's a very important message to get across, because it's a very common trap that people in the outdoors fall into. They think that what they see of the industry is representative of the whole industry, and it's not.
For each of these segments, we broke it down by who they participate with, so the sub-segments, and that's based on family, so if they participate with their family, if they participate on their own, or if they participate with others. So for example, you'll have an adventurer, a social adventurer, a family adventurer, and a lone adventurer. So we're not going to go through the detail of those sub-segments today, but just worth you knowing that, the details in the report. So what I'll do for each group is just highlight some of the key differentiating factors, the details all on the posters and in the report. So for an adventurer, they're more likely to be 24 to 44 age group. Doesn't mean you don't get younger adventurers or older adventurers, it just tends to peak motivator at that age. They are the most likely group to have started young, so the key motivating factor at a younger age. More likely to participate in the summer, and they're more likely to like the hard-edged activities, hence the mountain bike imagery. So the next one is the thrill seeker. Okay, so for these guys, is extreme sports involving physical risk. But the really, really important thing for these guys is that they want that massive adrenaline rush. They want to throw themselves off at something and get the adrenaline rush or do whatever they do. But this is the important bit. They want to be out of control, but they want someone else to manage that risk for them. So they want to perceive it as risky, but they want someone else to take the risk for them. The other key thing about this group is that they do it and they enjoy it, and that's a definition of enjoyment. And then they go back to their life and they don't apply it to their life. They just leave it where it was. And then the next time they go and do an activity, they'll have the same thrill and then get on with their life. It's the smallest of all segments. It's 3% of the market. They are the largest male, 80% male. More likely to be 20s, early 30s. So remember the thrill seeker, they want someone else to take the risk for them. With the challenger, this is absolutely about putting your body on the line, controlling that battle with nature, probably not enjoying it when you're actually in the moment of doing it, and I could definitely relate to that one. But you really take what you've done and apply it back to your life, and you're in control of it. So you're in control of it, you know what you're doing, you take what you've learned, put it back in your life, maybe apply it to another challenge at another time. It's a fundamental difference between a challenger and a thrill seeker. 21%. No surprise, we think about the growth of, I've just done some work with running, and challenge events is by far the biggest running growth in the running market, the different challenge events. And so if you think about it, it's probably no surprise that this is it's the second largest of all of the segments.
It's worth pointing out that challenge is both personal and relative to their skill level. So for some people, the challenge event could be a Tough Mudder. For other, for a committed climber, a challenge event will be a significant peak or a big summit. So the challenge is personal to that.
Yeah. So we talked about the subsegments. It's the largest group that's with others. It's the largest social subsegment. Again, more likely to be male. And it's consistent across all ages, and frequent and consistent. So they're likely to participate, more likely to participate on a weekly basis and across the year. The interesting one here is the connection with the next group, which is fitness in nature. It's not about the challenge, it's not about the necessary competing or training, it's about just getting your trainers on or getting on your bike and going for some exercise. The reason we put that it's an interesting connection with the challenger is because we found, and certainly based on the conversations we had at the workshops as well, is that people, fitness in nature, and the goal is the challenge. They do the challenge, and then they go and do some fitness in nature again, and then they go and do another challenge. What we need to do to drive participation is actually connect those two things up. So there's loads of these challenge events going on out there. How do we actually work with the sector to engage people in the fitness in nature bit and get them training towards a challenge? Because with this group, they're 17% of the overall market, the challengers are 21%, so the big sizes of the market. Equally male-female, but they're also frequent and consistent. So if you can try and get that connection of the two together, you're much more likely to get a committed long-term participation on a frequent basis. More likely to be 35 years plus, and these are the group by far that do it from their doorstep. So it's very convenient. They're choosing to do that above going to do something else indoors, and it's from their doorstep, less than 2 miles. Okay, the Explorer. So this is where activity starts not being a factor, really. Then that isn't a reason for doing it. They're doing it for physical activity around emotional purposes, maybe about learning. But the important bit here is it's very likely to include a secondary hobby. So they're likely to go walk up a mountain because they want to see a specific bird or take a specific photograph. So it's very much revolved around exploring the natural world and it being part of whatever else they're doing. So it's the largest of all of the segments. And if we think about the imagery used there and some of the imagery that's used before with the hardcore mountain biking and people throwing themselves off things, that's much more likely to be the imagery that's used within the sector at the moment. There's less use of the sort of people having a meander in the nice environment. And yet they are the largest segment. So and this is the only segment that's got more of a prominent female participation and older. So we talk about 55 years plus, they're more likely to be driven by this motivation. It's got the largest family subsegment, so the Family Explorer is the largest of all of the subsegments with family. But they are more likely to be monthly occasional, so very much dip in, dip out. Participate in the countryside, and like the softer edged activity. So hill walking is really strong within this group. But it's not the only activity within this group. Tribe members. So for these are your typical club members. So they're committed to their sport. It's about training, skill improvement, and it's the only time we started mentioning competition and winning. So like to be part of a specific club within the outdoors. 9% of the overall market, which has been interesting for some outdoor governing bodies to get their head around, because they see that their world are tribe members. And if they see that, and we try and convince them that not everybody that goes to a club is driven by this motivation. So they see that everybody goes to a club is driven by competing, training, winning, etc. But people go to a club might want to have a social side. They might be there just for some fun. That includes the instructors' leaders. So the instructors' leaders within the sector tend to be tribe members. More likely to be male again. Very frequent and consistent. So they're doing on a weekly basis, training, competing. And more likely to participate in the countryside again. Okay, 2 more to go. The learner. Similar to the explorer, but with the learner, their absolute priority, primary reason for being there is to learn something. So the activity comes secondary to that. So they may be going to do for kids bushcraft, or for adults it might be a workplace team building day, and actually they may discover some form of physical activity in the outdoors along the way. So that's the difference, is they're there to learn something or personal development. Relatively small percentage of the market, but the caveat is that this again was the over 16s. I think if you looked at this for under 16s, I think this market would be bigger. So if you included children in that, I think one of the key things that comes through in research is the first experience young people have is through either bushcraft schools or learning through the outdoors. So yeah, that's over 16% of the market. More likely to have first participated with friends. Very monthly, occasional, again that dip in, dip out. More likely to participate in the countryside and water. Okay, and the last segment is the freestyler. So as I said right at the start, these guys didn't necessarily come through in the report because of the nature of who they are. So they are basically out there, it's part of their life, it's part of their culture. They're doing activities that are very much alternative, freestyle orientated sports. It's very cool, fashion, music is all wrapped up in why they're doing what they're doing. We did some sort of worked out that they are around 4% of that overall market. But in terms of growth, there is potential huge growth within this market. And again, particularly when you're looking at the younger age groups, they're more likely to be youth age group. Again, more likely to be male. And by far the group that's much more likely to participate in an urban environment. And they are very frequent and consistent. Literally, it is their day. You know, that is what they do. It's very much part of who they are.
It's worth adding those comments about climbing again. It's very easy for some sports to confuse the activity with the motivation. So it's a freestyler motivation to participate in some sort of outdoor activity. And what we've noticed is, for example, climbing might not see itself as a freestyle activity. I might think that freestyle activities are parkour or skating or those kind of activities. Whereas if you look within climbing, you can find pockets of freestylers. So if you go to the forest in Fontainebleau, there'll be a group of people hanging out in a tented encampment, and it's as much about the slacklining and the music and the clothing and the bouldering and doing the move as a group of mates as it is about climbing as an activity. Does that make sense? If you were to go to the Climbing Works, which is a very sort of popular busy climbing wall in Sheffield, you'll find a group of teenagers, equal male-female participation, 15 years old. Again, it's about the cafe culture and the music and the hanging out with their mates and bouldering together as much as it is about being climbers per se.
Motivations do change, as do the activities. So just to make it a bit personal, and to give you my example of my story. So I was absolutely a challenger. Every single year I did a challenge for Motor Neuron, and I did a range of different challenges, and that's what I was absolutely committed to do, and I was driven as a challenger. But then, as life does, family comes along, my family, and we go, Benjamin was younger then, we went to the Lake District, and it was all about being together as a family, and we hire a boat, and we go rowing around Windermere, and it wasn't about my husband and I getting physical activity, it was just about us being together as a family and doing something. So at the weekend, I'm a family explorer, although now I'm a family adventurer because you can actually do something that's a bit more adventurous, but family explorer. Whereas during the week, I am fitness in nature. Don't want the family around, and we live on the edge of Delamere Forest. I want to get my trainers on or get on my bike and go for a run stroke ride without anyone around me, and it's just purely for my getting away from work and my own keeping in shape reasons. That is absolutely it, because I haven't got the challenge at the moment to keep me focused. So that's all I'm there to do. So what really this point is that depending on where you are in your life and depending on what your motivations are, they do change. And I think the problem with segmentation is that people tend to put people in boxes. They think, right, you're an explorer and therefore you'll always be an explorer, and sort of miss the point that actually you're an explorer, but actually you do change what you do for different reasons. So if we look at how we apply these segments now to potential growth areas. So we go back to this 18.2 million people. So just a reminder, these are the people who either aren't active, who are active but not active outdoors. So that's the 18.2 million people that stated that they would want to do something outdoors. When we looked at those people and we sort of did cluster analysis of those people, so we extracted those people out in terms of data analysis, they are more likely to be the freestylers, so that's where you get this 10% of the adult population stat coming in, more likely to be challengers, and more likely to be fitness in nature. Okay, so these are getting people to do something outdoors. So in terms of your potentially inactive market or getting people to do something more, they're the key ones, foremost ones. When we look at the existing market, and if your driver's about frequency, and you want to get those that are already got some type of commitment, but it might be once every few years, or it might just be like once a year or something, we want to get them to do more in terms of regular participation. 31% want to do more. So when we asked in the survey, you're active outdoors, would you want to do more? 31% said yes. They are more likely to be the learner, challenger, adventurer, and thrill seeker. So the question around explorer is, that hasn't got growth, it isn't necessarily a growth area, it's just a big part of the market. But the important thing is, in terms of serving them, they're a big part of the market, so they're an existing part. You've got to keep them, if you like. In terms of growth within an existing market, to get them doing it more frequently, they're the groups.